The ship had no right to be there. That was Commodore Zell Atherin's first thought when the sensor report landed on his console. Not concerned. Not an alarm. Just the quiet, professional certainty that something had gone wrong with the data. He read it again. Mass, 4.2 million metric tons. Length, 3,800 meters. Power signature, 0. Life signs, 0. IFF response, none. Previous sensor record, none. He looked up at the viewport. There was nothing visible, of course. The object was 40,000 kilometers out. But he found himself looking anyway, the way you look at a sound you can't identify. The way your body processes threat before your mind catches up. Navigation, he said quietly, when was this sector last logged? His navigation officer, Sublegate Torn, didn't look up from her console. 14 days ago, sir. Full sweep. Nothing. And this? Just appeared on the long-range pass. No transit signature. No entry vector. It did not arrive. She paused, as if choosing her next words carefully. It was simply, not there. And then it was. Atherin set the report down. 4.2 million metric tons. The largest vessel in the Vethari hegemony fleet, the dreadnought Sovereign Reach, massed at 1.8 million. They built her over 11 years. Celebrated her launch with 3 days of planetary ceremony. Called her the apex of hegemony engineering, the pinnacle of everything their civilization had built toward. Whatever was sitting 40,000 kilometers off their port side was twice that size. And it had been placed there, silently, in the 14 days since their last patrol. Battle stations, Atherin said. Quietly. They approached at 1/4 speed. Protocol demanded it. When you found an unknown vessel of unknown origin showing no power signature, you did not rush. You observed. You recorded. You gave yourself options. The ship came into visual range after 2 hours of careful approach, and the bridge fell silent. It was wrong in a way that was difficult to articulate. Not wrong like a threat, the weapons ports, if those were weapons ports, were closed. Nothing moved. No emissions. No signal. But wrong in some deeper sense, the kind of wrongness that lives at the edge of instinct. The hull was dark, not painted dark, but weathered dark. The original color, whatever it had been eaten away over vast stretches of time into something that was simply the color of deep space. There were impact scars across the prow, long gouges, and old ablation burns that had been there long enough to lose their sharp edges. The metal around them had settled, fatigued, accepted its wounds. Those scars were old. Very old. But the ship was intact. Not adrift, not crippled. Positioned. The orientation was deliberate, aligned exactly perpendicular to the border corridor, the major transit lane between Vethari space and the sectors beyond. Placed there with geometric precision, like a monument or a gate. On the prow, barely visible through the weathering, was a marking. A clenched fist. And inside the fist, held but not crushed, a small sphere. A planet. Atherin had never seen that symbol before. He found, without being able to explain why, that he did not want to look at it for very long. Any response to hails? No, sir. Any change in power signature? 0 output. It's cold. Any sign of damage beyond the hull scarring? His sensor officer, Prex, hesitated. That hesitation was not reassuring. No, sir. The hull scarring is extensive. But structural integrity reads as complete. Whatever damaged this ship, it was repaired. Thoroughly. Another pause. The repair welds read differently from the original hull composition. At least 4 separate generations of repair work. Atherin turned slowly. 4 generations. At minimum. He looked back at the ship. At the scarring that had been repaired. At the repairs that had been made over generations, plural. At the hull that had been maintained, and maintained, and maintained across spans of time he didn't want to calculate. Who flies a ship for that long? Someone on the bridge murmured. Nobody answered. The boarding team suited up in silence. Atherin had selected 12, his security chief, Warden Kex, plus 11 soldiers. He went himself. Protocol said the commanding officer remained aboard. He overrode protocol. He needed to see. The docking collar attached without resistance. The outer door was unlocked. Not just unlocked, open. The airlock cycled normally, as if it had been waiting. Inside, the darkness was total. They lit their lamps and moved in a tight formation, and the ship opened around them like a cathedral built for giants. The ceilings were high, designed for beings taller than the Vethari, or designed to create a specific psychological effect. Both possibilities were equally unsettling. The corridors were wide, the floors slightly textured in a pattern that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it, and every surface was dustless. Not recently cleaned. Dustless in the way a vacuum-sealed space maintains itself over centuries, everything too perfect, too preserved, too waiting. Life support is active, Kex reported, reading from his scanner. Minimal. Enough for the ship's systems to run cold. Air is breathable but cold. Very cold. Temperature? 2 degrees above what would kill most biologicals. Enough to maintain. Not enough to live in. They found the crew on the lower decks. Stasis pods. Thousands of them, arranged in long chambers that stretched beyond what the lamplight could reach. Each pod sealed, each powered by a dedicated cold cell unit that required almost no energy and could run, by Atherin's estimation, for an extremely long time. Inside each pod, through the frosted glass, was a shape. A human shape. Lying still. Faint vital signs reading on the exterior panel. Not dead. Sleeping. Atherin stood in the doorway of the first pod chamber and counted the rows until the darkness swallowed them. He stopped counting at 600. How many? He asked. Prex, connected via comm from the patrol vigilance, ran the calculation. Based on the ship's dimensions and this configuration? Between 8 and 12,000. 12,000 soldiers in dreamless sleep, in a ship that had been sitting alone on the edge of his patrol sector for God knew how long, maintained by minimal automated systems, cold and dark and perfect. Waiting. Find the bridge, Atherin said. Find the logs. The bridge was sealed but not locked. It took 20 minutes to find it, and when the doors opened, the consoles powered on, not from any external command, just from the door opening, automated activation, as if the ship was accustomed to visitors and had planned for them. Soft amber light came up from the floor panels. The main display activated, showing a star map Atherin recognized, this sector, in clean geometric lines, the border corridor marked in pale blue. His position was marked on it. In real time. He stood very still for a moment, looking at the dot of light that represented his ship on a human display screen, and he felt something he rarely felt. Something his long career had almost trained out of him. He felt small. The ship knows we're here, Keck said. It has always known we're here, Atherin replied. This is its function. He moved to the command console and found the log system. The interface was alien, human script, incomprehensible. But Prex had an automatic translation unit running, and it took only minutes to pull the header data. Last crew log, 340 years ago. Last automated system log, this morning. The automated logs were dense, thousands of entries spanning 3.5 centuries. Position confirmations. Sensor sweeps. System status. The same data, repeated, day after day after day, for 340 years. The ship had been filing reports to itself, or to something, every single day for the entire time it had been here. Every day. Without fail. What is it reporting to? Kex asked. Prex answered from the ship, voice slightly tight. I'm tracing the logs. They contain a narrow beam signal package. Tight beam, non-broadcast. Aimed at, sir, it's aimed at multiple points simultaneously. Across what would be human space. It's been sending position data to human space every day for 3 centuries? Yes, sir. A pause. The signal contains more than position data. I'm translating the format now. Another pause, longer. Sir. The signal includes a variable flag. The flag has been set to the same value for 340 years. What value? The pause before Prex answered was the longest yet. The flag reads, position holding. Border status, nominal. Countdown, pending. The bridge was very quiet. Atherin looked at the star map. At his ship, marked in real time. At the border corridor stretching ahead. At the calm amber light of a vessel that had been waiting patiently, for 3.5 centuries. What countdown? Kex asked softly. And then the ship answered. Not with words. Not with weapons. The ship's sensor array activated with a sound like a slow exhalation, deep, bass, felt in the chest more than heard, and every passive sensor on the vessel went fully active simultaneously. The power output, which had been near zero, spiked into the range of a warship running full combat operations. Just sensors. No shields raised. No weapons hot. Just eyes, opening all at once, every electromagnetic instrument the ship carried turning toward the hegemony patrol fleet in one slow, precise, comprehensive sweep. The ship looked at them. Recorded everything. Then powered down again to near zero. 40 seconds of full operation. Then silence. Sir, Prex said, voice very carefully controlled. In that 40-second window, the ship sent a data package. It was not aimed at human space. Atherin closed his eyes briefly. Where was it aimed? Everywhere. Omnidirectional broadcast. The data package contained your ship's IFF signatures, hull classifications, crew complement estimates, weapon loadout analysis, position, heading, and, sir, it transmitted the flag change. What did the flag change to? Border status. Intrusion detected. Countdown, initiated. Atherin returned to his ship and sat in his command chair and did not speak for 4 minutes. His crew did not speak either. When he finally opened a channel to Fleet Command, he gave a clean, factual account of what they had found. No speculation. No editorializing. He was a professional, and professionals gave clean reports. Fleet Command's response came back in 17 minutes. They were sending 100 ships. While he waited, Atherin read the translated portion of the last human crew log. 340 years old. Written by a man identified only by a service number, and a rank that translated roughly to Senior Watch Commander. The log was not dramatic. That was the first thing that struck him. A man writing what might be his last conscious entry before entering stasis for potentially centuries, and the entry was quiet, professional, matter-of-fact. Third watch. All systems nominal. Crew transition to stasis complete. I am last aboard active duty. Have confirmed signal link to fleet. Boundary post is live and holding. Will enter stasis 0600. Ship will maintain watch. If anything wakes me, I'll know why. If nothing ever does, that's fine too. That's the job. That was the entire entry. Atherin read it 3 times. He kept returning to the last line. That's the job. 12,000 soldiers who had willingly entered centuries of dreamless cold, with no guarantee they would ever be woken, because it was the job. Because someone had decided this border needed watching, and the watching needed to happen for as long as it needed to happen, and 12,000 people had said yes and closed their eyes and waited. He thought about the repair welds. For generations. Someone had come here, at intervals Prex estimated at 60 to 80 years, to maintain the hull. To ensure the cold cells kept running. To make sure the ship kept watching. They had not forgotten it. For 340 years, they had not forgotten it. "Sir," said Sublegate Torn. "I'm picking up anomalous signals. Multiple points. Sector-wide." He looked up. "Define anomalous." She turned from her console, and her expression was the expression of someone who has found a word for a feeling they have had for the last several hours. "Fear, clear and clean. The 40-second sensor pulse. When the ship broadcast our data. I think." She stopped. Started again. "I think it woke others." "Show me." The display updated. The sector map, which should have shown only the patrol fleet and the single silent warship, now showed more. Resonant signals, weak but unmistakable, pulsing from locations across the sector. Near transit corridor junctions. Near gravity wells. Near every strategic choke point Atherin had spent his career learning. 12 signals. Then 17. Then 31. Each one a ship-sized mass that had been there long enough to be mistaken for background stellar data, broadcasting its awakening on a narrow frequency that the Hegemony standard sensor suite had never been specifically tuned to detect. They had been there. All of them. Silent and cold and perfectly placed, for longer than anyone knew. And one ship's 40-second sensor pulse had told them, something is here. Adjust status. Wake up and watch. Fleet Command will be here in 6 hours, Keck said. They know, Atherin said. Sir. He gestured at the map. At the 31 signals, and the new ones still resolving. 43 now. 51. Whatever system governs those ships, it already knows Fleet Command is coming. It has been tracking every transit signature in this sector for 3 centuries. Every ship that passed through here. Every patrol. Every survey vessel. Every freighter. He thought about the daily logs. Position holding. Border status, nominal. 340 years of nominal. When Fleet Command brings 100 ships, he said, what do you think that flag will read? Nobody answered. They didn't need to. The Hegemony fleet arrived 4 hours early. Admiral Sova commanding, aboard the Sovereign Reach. 107 warships in close formation, dropping from transit with perfect coordination, spreading into defensive formation automatically, weapons hot, shields raised. The best fleet the Hegemony had built. Atherin watched them arrive with the particular feeling of a man who understands, in clear and clinical detail, that something has already gone past the point where fleets matter. He tried to explain it in his calm to Admiral Sova. He was not sure he succeeded. Sova was a fleet admiral. Fleet admirals understood enemy ships and enemy weapons and enemy positions. They were not designed to understand the thing that Atherin had been sitting with for 6 hours. The thing that the ship's presence, and the log, and the repair welds, and the 4 generations of maintenance implied. Not threat. Not attack. Patience. Patience so deep it had become architectural. Built into ships and people and systems across centuries, sustained by a civilization that had looked at this border and decided, simply and without drama, that it would watch it forever. Not because they expected to be attacked. Not because they were angry or afraid. But because watching forever was something they were apparently capable of, and so that was what they did. The human ships moved when the hegemony fleet dropped out of transit. Not fast. Not aggressively. They simply turned, each of them, wherever they were positioned across the sector. Slowly. With the unhurried certainty of objects that have been waiting a long time for a specific moment and have been calibrated for exactly this. 59 ships, Atherin's final count. 59 ancient warships, each one between 3 and 5,000 meters long, each one weathered and scarred and maintained and cold, turning their prows toward the hegemony fleet simultaneously. No weapons hot. No shields. No signals. Just, we see you. The hegemony fleet held formation for 23 minutes without moving. Atherin, aboard his patrol vessel in the rear, watched Admiral Sova process what he was seeing. He could not hear the bridge of the Sovereign reach. He did not need to. He had already had his 4 hours. The human transmission arrived on all frequencies simultaneously at the 23-minute mark. Not from the ships. The ships remained silent. The transmission came from deep in human space, relayed through some system hegemony signals analysis had never mapped, bounced from one side of the sector to the other and arriving with the clean authority of a voice that was accustomed to being heard and did not feel the need to be loud about it. The translation unit rendered it in standard Vethari. It was a single voice. An older voice. Not angry. Not threatening. Tired. You've woken them. That was your message to us. We received it 340 years ago, when we placed the first ones. You've been sending that message every day since, every patrol vessel that passed this corridor, every survey ship, every freight convoy. Every transit. We recorded all of it. Sova's channel opened. Who is speaking? Identify yourself and your authority. A brief pause. Not hesitation. The pause of someone choosing how much explanation to offer. My authority is 3 centuries of patience and 59 ships that have never once had to fire their weapons. My name isn't relevant to your decision. What decision? The decision every fleet makes, when they find the sentinels. You found one. You woke them all. That's the first message. It tells us someone reached our border with enough intent to trigger the sensor threshold. The second message is what you're receiving now. Most civilizations stop here. They understand what the sentinels mean, and they recalculate. Sova was quiet for a moment. Atherin could hear the shape of the Admiral's thinking, the instinct to assert, to threaten, to remind this calm voice that 107 warships were positioned and armed and ready. He wanted to tell the Admiral, don't. He wanted to say, I have spent 6 hours sitting with this, and I am telling you, do not measure this against your warships. Some don't stop, the voice continued. Some respond the way you're thinking of responding right now. With numbers. With weapons. With the reasoning that 100 ships can overwhelm 59, even old ones, even large ones. The pause was very brief. I won't tell you they're wrong about the math. Another pause. Longer. The weight of it settling over the bridge frequencies like something physical. What I'll tell you is that the sentinels were never the point. The sentinels are a question. Everything that follows depends on your answer. The civilizations that answered correctly are still here. The ones that didn't, they aren't remembered anymore, because there's no one left who knew them. Sova said nothing. We have not fired a single shot at your ships. We will not, unless you fire first. We are not interested in your territory. We are not interested in your people. We are interested in one thing, which is the same thing we have been interested in for 340 years. The border. We would like it to remain as it is. That's all. That's the whole message. It has always been the whole message. We placed 59 ships to deliver it because we wanted to make sure it was loud enough to hear. Atherin looked at the sensor display. At 59 ancient warships holding position with the stillness of objects that had been practicing stillness for centuries. At 12,000 human soldiers waking from 340 years of dreamless cold, standing to their stations aboard vessels that had been waiting for exactly this moment, running through exactly these procedures, as calmly and professionally as if they had drilled it last week. Because they had. They had been drilling it, in the sleep of preserved memory, for 3 centuries. Running the procedures in whatever space the human mind inhabits when the body is cold and still. Ready for the day the flag changed. That's the job. What do you want us to do? Sova asked. And it was the question of a fleet admiral who was good at his job and had, in the last several minutes, determined that his job was no longer what he had come here to do. Decide, the voice said. And then go home. Whatever you decide, we'll know. We have been watching this border for a very long time. We are very good at watching. The transmission ended. The 59 ships held their position. Sova's fleet held theirs. The silence stretched across the sensor display for 11 minutes. Then Admiral Sova gave the order to reverse course, and 107 hegemony warships began the slow turn back toward home. The human ships did not pursue. Did not signal. Did not lower their sensor arrays. They watched. Athrin was the last to leave. He stood at his viewport as the patrol vessel came about, looking at the original ship, the first one, the one his patrol had found cold and silent and placed with geometric care on the border corridor. Through the viewport, even at this distance, he could see faint light now where there had been none before. Power coming up through the ship. Life support rising from minimal to something warmer. Cold cells cycling through their wake sequence. Somewhere in those long stasis chambers, Senior Watch Commander, service number unknown, was opening his eyes. 340 years. He had gone to sleep with the stars and woken with the same ones. The border is still there. The job is still done. The flag changed back to nominal now, presumably, because the intrusion had ended. Athrin tried to imagine it. He found he couldn't. Not the duration. He could do the math on the duration. But the quality of it. The specific nature of a civilization that could look at a border and say, this matters. This will always matter. We will make it always matter by sending people to watch it, not for years, not for decades, but for as long as it takes, as long as it needs to be, until the last star cools if that's what the job demands. And the people who had said yes to that. Who had walked into the cold and said wake me when it matters. He wondered if the Senior Watch Commander, opening his eyes in the amber warmth of returning systems, 3 centuries removed from everything he had ever known, felt anything about the time that had passed. Or if he simply pulled up the sensor display and filed his first active watch log. Position, Boundary Corridor, Sector 7. Status, nominal. Date, current. That's the job. The patrol vigilance completed its turn. Athrin's patrol sector fell behind them. The silent ships receded into the distances where they had been placed, and would remain, and would watch with the infinite patience of something that had confused endurance for permanence, or perhaps had simply understood, from the very beginning, that they were the same thing. He never transmitted a signal. There was nothing to say. The 59 ships knew, already, that the hegemony was going home. They had been watching. They would keep watching. That was the job.